Hello everybody, this is Jannecke and today we will be speaking about yoga and how to take better care of our bodies and mental health and spiritual health. And I have a beautiful guest on my show. Her name is Dashama. She's a yoga teacher and author and the founder of the Prasha Yoga Institute. She has been called the Anthony Robbins of yoga, and she has an immensely popular YouTube channel that you just have to check out with a lot of free videos on how to practice yoga basically. Hello Dashama, welcome to Wisdom from North. How are you?
Hi, so wonderful to be here. Great, how are you?
I'm good, and I've been watching many of your videos lately, and you cover a lot of topics. I love that. It's not just the movement. And I wanted to ask you about that because me and I think many from the Western culture might be thinking about yoga as only movement. But then I went to India 3 years ago, and all the practices were called yoga, and only one were movement and physical. So can you talk a little bit about your approach and how you see yoga?
Absolutely. So the actual word yoga, it has a meaning, and the translation from Sanskrit to English is to unite or to yoke, right? So to bring together into wholeness. And so if you understand that being the meaning of it, the yoga poses is one aspect. So that's the physical layer of our existence, right? We have a body, and what do we do with this body? So yoga is so powerful because it can help you to heal and balance and release pain and release stress and all of these really wonderful things. Strengthens you, and I've seen amazing healing transformations on the physical level. But the really incredible part about it is that through the study and the practice of yoga, you learn that you have more than the physical body, of course. So we have different layers of our being, and we have the emotional and the mental and the spiritual and all these layers. So we call these koshas.
Koshas.
Koshas, there's a word for it, koshas, which is like your layers. Another word for it is like your shell, like different shells. So you have your physical, that's the part you can touch, but then you have these other ones, like the emotional. And so the cool thing is, the more you understand about yoga, that you can use the various practices to influence, to clear and to balance and to purify and to harmonize the different layers of your being with the practices. And not just the physical asanas, but like with breath work, with the meditation practices. There's another thing in yoga called kriyas, and a kriya is like a purification or a cleansing technique. And so they have all of these amazing techniques, and some of them are a little bit crazy, but ultimately they all really work in a powerful way. And now it's so exciting because you see that this is becoming more and more accepted in the Western society, whereas there was a time when it was seen to be a little bit, woo-woo, or maybe some people were afraid that it was religious and that it would influence their religious beliefs, and there was all these kind of confusions around what it really is. And nowadays there's more and more light being brought to it because institutions such as Harvard University or even major medical centers around the world have done extensive research and study in showing that yoga prevents and cures a lot of problems in just minimally on the physical level, but then on these other levels specifically as well, as like emotional level, addictions, many mental imbalances can start to become reconciled through the practice of yoga. And when I say yoga, I mean not just the physical, but the spiritual practices as well, and the breath work and the meditations that I mentioned.
So all of these layers that you were talking about, I call them energy layers. So would it be correct to say that we can, in a way, fix a potential problem that is arriving, that might be laying in the aura? For instance, when you get sick, I've heard that it starts in the aura. So by practicing yoga, you can connect with these layers and then kind of heal it before it gets physical?
Absolutely. That's a good way to describe it. So part of what I teach, I have a specific system called the Prasha Method, and the Prasha Method has somewhat of the foundation is based on the idea that, a lot of our pain and our sickness is a psychosomatic connection, right? So meaning that there is something in the mind that's influencing the pain in the body. Or it could be the mind is influencing the pain and the emotions. But the mind is really everything. And everybody from the beginning of time, Buddha specifically, is known for this, but it really teaches this. All the masters of our time and before us have always taught that the mind is so powerful. So what you think, you create, right? And what you think, you become, and what you think, you also experience. So if in somewhere in the mind, and it doesn't have to be in the conscious, that's the interesting part. The mind has so many layers. Like there's the conscious, subconscious, superconscious, and unconscious, right? So it has all these different layers in the mind. You could have a belief or a trauma that's stored in your subconscious mind that you're not even currently really aware of, that's creating sickness or disease in your life. And so the incredible power that we have as human beings is to go in and actually reconcile and heal and release. And I like to use the word reprogram. You like reprogram your cellular DNA or your memory of that trauma or of that pain that's causing the vibration of sickness. And then when you heal it on a root level, then it doesn't come back. And it's really cool. Like that kind of thing, some people may believe it, maybe not, but I've seen it happen over and over. You've seen people that they call it miraculous healing, but it's really like because you get to the root of something, and when the root is healed, everything else above that or beyond that or in the body also experiences a shift.
That makes so sense. But is that through also physical movements that you can get to that core? That is actually movements that you're doing? Or is that more a meditation yoga?
I think both. Like, okay. I really am a believer in both. If you only sit and meditate, you're doing only half of the work. Your body is created to move. And that's one of the big issues with our society right now is sedentary lifestyle is causing sickness and disease and obesity specifically in America and all around the world. But not moving is a problem. Our body is created to move. Movement clears energy. Movement shifts energy. When you move your body, like when you dance, when you do yoga, any kind of movement, even like sex, whatever kind of movement, like you feel a physical, and every layer of your being feels different and a shift after the movement. So the physical movement is necessary, I do truly believe. Although you could get there just sitting and meditating. I just think that the combination is so powerful. And then like the reverse of that, for instance, you could just only do the movement without the meditation, but I think it will take a lot longer as well. The combined approach is the way to go. You know what I mean? You gotta do both.
So can you talk a little bit about the chakras and how yoga can open these chakras, and if we can, get into more contact with our intuition or higher self, through the crown chakra or the heart, that maybe these movements can open up, for, I don't know, psychic abilities?
Absolutely. So whether or not people believe in chakras, I always like to help them to understand that you have energy, right? And you can feel it. It's very real. So you feel when your heart feels really open or really closed. That's why people really can feel when they're in love, because it's a feeling. You can't deny it. And they also feel when their heart hurts, right? So this is very physical. So if you can relate that to the chakras, you can start to understand that chakras are just little vortexes of energy. They open and they close, and they're spinning all the time, right? And they have different frequencies. So the different frequencies have different colors. So just like a prism, when a light goes through a crystal prism, on the other side comes a rainbow. And each one of those colors connects with a different vibration or a different frequency, a pattern, a wave pattern. And this is how you can start to see from a scientific perspective chakras in general. So our bodies are like a prism. We are a crystal, right? Kind of in a way. And then the light's coming through, and sometimes the light can't come through and it's blocked, right? And that's when we have a constriction or we have pain and we start to see sickness or disease or problems in an area. So if you get, let's say for instance, if you get migraines all the time, that's a constriction of the sixth chakra, right? This is your third eye. This is your intuitive inward vision, you know. And so if you're getting migraines all the time, or like people that get TMJ or lockjaw, this is fifth chakra, right? This area. So you can see that it's always very correlative, right, in the area where it's at. Or like, you know, I had a thyroid disease when I was younger, so this is fifth chakra. Very, mine was very open, right? So it was like I had hyperactive thyroid. A lot of people have hypoactive thyroid. So that means like communication and this whole energy center of self-expression is very blocked. And same thing with the heart, you know, we know what that represents, but each chakra has a different type of energy that it's representing. So like third chakra is down in the solar plexus, and this is your confidence and your self-empowerment and your ego balanced with humility and feeling that power from that humble space. And, you know, people get, for instance, let's say you get like a bladder infections. Like I used to get bladder infections all the time when I was younger, and I didn't understand any of these things, and I was always sick, and I took all these antibiotics, and and then when I learned all of this understanding about, wow, I had blocked energy in my second and first chakra, and then I started doing the research of like, in my own life, like going through my life, seeing like, why would I have blocked energy in first and second chakra? Okay, I grew up in foster homes, so my family energy was very unstable, and, you know, so like you can start to see where the root of it's coming from. You can trace it back through your history and see where the root of your blocks are and imbalances are, and then through a process of healing and through meditation and cord cutting and forgiveness therapy and breath work and yoga and meditation and all these things, you know, you start to reconcile and release and heal those memories from your database, right? And then you have that clarity, and then the pain starts to dissolve, and you don't get the sickness anymore, and you don't manifest the diseases anymore. Like I barely ever get any things down there anymore. Like I used to get bladder infections all the time, you know what I mean? So it's like one of those things that you actually see a real physical shift on, you know, in your physical health when you've cleared or healed that energy center.
So you really think it's possible to totally get rid of it? Because I've wondered about that, you know.
Yeah.
That
okay, so I mean, I'll give you my perspective. I don't think it's necessarily like just do yoga and you'll get rid of it. Like that's not my approach at all. I think yoga is one very important fundamental part of it. It's like the foundation, right? Meditation, yoga, and healthy eating. Like for instance, I'm having a green smoothie. It's almost gone. But basically, you know, like I teach this very specific program because it's not just one thing. You're not just going to like do yoga and miraculously you're healed. Some people, you know, it does create a miraculous shift. But the combination of like yoga and like nutritional healing and really looking at yourself as an individual and your own unique blocks, for instance, and looking, and like I said, tracing it back and finding the roots in your own specific case is so important. You can't think that everybody has the same life, you know, that you could just apply one thing and everybody would be healed by that one technique or by this one yoga practice. You know what I mean? It's just not, it's not like that. It's more prescriptive, I would say, my approach anyway. And then combining it with other things. So like when I was mentioning earlier, like cord cutting therapy or forgiveness therapy, these are all part of what I consider yoga, but most people wouldn't put those in the category of yoga. You know, those are healing therapies. But I have this thing called the Prasha Method. I consider this all part of the yoga because our goal here is to get back to wholeness. So the wholeness is the yoga, right? And so whatever that takes is the yoga practice. And somehow over the years, we've gotten a visual on what a yoga practice looks like because it looks like a pose. But that's not really what, for me, a yoga practice is. Yoga practice is whatever it takes to get back to your wholeness.
So would you say, I'm curious about what you actually mean with wholeness. You know, I mean, like just accepting that, like, you know, we need to become whole and everything. And then I started thinking about, but what does it mean? Like, what does it mean? Like, if I was whole right now, how would I appear? Would I be happy all the time? I don't think that. I think, you know, I would still experience the ups and downs of life. But what is your perspective on what is whole? And are you there?
I think, well, as far as what is whole, I feel that wholeness is a state of being where you have connection to source. So you are listening to intuition. You can hear the voice of God inside of you. You're guided by that. And unwavering in that guidance, which is really important. You know, like if you've ever been guided by your intuition, you know when you're on point and you know when you didn't listen, right? Wholeness is you always listen because you love yourself so much. You know the repercussions for not listening, right? And this is an interesting thing because wholeness is that connection, that maintaining that connection with source all the time. That's what I feel wholeness is. And in that vibration, right, that's an aspiration to get to. Would I say that it's possible to be happy all the time? I would say, you know, the masters that I've ever resonated most with, they make a big point to say peace is actually a greater aspiration than happiness. Because happiness depends on external factors and peace comes entirely from within. So if something happens in your life, it may not make you happy, but you can be at peace with it. And so that in itself is a step towards your wholeness, right? So you're like, okay, something really bad happened. Somebody came in your life and did something that you were like, you know, totally not expecting, and it was not good. And instead of reacting in a negative way or being hurt or, you know, all the different ways that it could go, instead you accept it, you know, and then be at peace with it. And that's the direction towards wholeness. So, I mean, do I believe that it's possible to feel wholeness all the time? Yes, I do. There are a few enlightened masters alive on the earth today. You may have heard of like Amachi or Ama. She's the hugging saint from India. Yeah. And, you know, there's a few and like they represent that. Now, I don't live within her body. I don't know if she always feels that, but I definitely believe that she probably does because, I mean, she doesn't even sleep for days and days hugging people. Like she's hugged like 35 million people in her life. You know what I mean? I'm thinking like, she's probably there. And everybody that I know who goes to her ashram and stuff, they're like, yeah, she's definitely enlightened. It's no question. And so like for that, it's exciting because you see, all right, there's a few living examples. And I would say someone like Gandhi, you know, there were like Mother Teresa, perhaps, you know, there were definitely some living examples. And that's also like Jesus came and Buddha, and they came to show that it is possible to get there. And even if you get to 99%, you're still good, or like 80%. Keep trying, you know what I mean? It's worth the effort. What else are you going to do? You know, just suffer. Suffering is the alternative. So moving towards wholeness, moving towards peace is always a good direction.
And I also think that, to me, I think it's also about accepting, you know, your dark sides or your shadow sides, or that you actually feel emotions of anger. But I, you know, in my, how I picture kind of a master is that they get these feelings, but they let the feeling just move through them in a way, rather than acting upon it or, you know, keeping it. It's like the weather is just going through them, but they still notice it, because I do think that we all have all the emotions.
Yeah.
Like in every human
You always
being.
will, human, as long as, yeah, and that's the whole, like I was saying about the chakras and how we're a prism. So we filter this energy as it comes through. And if our chakras are open and balanced and spinning properly, that's what they actually are intended to do, is filter energy and move it around and flow it through, right? It's just when they're blocked that it can't flow through. So like if you really see yourself as a crystal, right? You're like a little crystal and the energy is flowing through and an emotional storm comes, but you're all open and everything's balanced, you can weather the storm well. You're still going to experience it, but you're not going to die or drown or suffocate, or, you know, your house isn't going to fall down on you about it. It's just you see and you witness and you can observe and respond instead of react. And I think that that's the number one thing, is just, like you said, self-acceptance or acceptance of whatever is. That's really important. And also that whatever happens, that you respond from a centered place of love and understanding, and recognizing that others, wherever they're at, just accepting them for where they're at without, you know, projecting upon them where they should be, and then the judgment of the difference between where they should be and where they're at, you know, and all these other things that human nature tends to move towards. You know?
It's so easy to fall into that trap.
Well, it's human nature, but I think that we can actually go beyond our nature in a way. You know, like I think in some way, Western society has gotten into this idea that, oh, we're born this way, and so this is just how it is. And I used to feel that way. I was like, oh, you know, like for instance, when I was sick all the time, I was like, oh, I'm just sick all the time. It is what it is. And then when I had someone tell me one time, and the realization that you can actually heal your life, I never like really heard that before. I was in my early 20s, you know, when I really started to understand that, you know, we have the ability to heal ourselves and to heal our life. And then when you do that, you're a better contribution to the world. So that's a good enough reason, first of all. But then also you can help others that way. And typically that leads you towards your dharma. So I've seen that a lot in my career and in my path, as well as people who have found their purpose in life through their own deepest darkness and the suffering, like you mentioned. So our darkness, our darkest time in life, our, you know, they call it the dark night of the soul, but sometimes it lasts years, so we don't really call it a night. Sometimes like years.
Yeah.
But the dark nights of the soul is what, you know, it's like putting the iron in the fire, you know, and then it becomes transformed. And then in that transformational process, you become stronger, you become more powerful than you ever would have been before. So it's always for the best. And every time I have a challenge, when you're going through it, it's not so easy, but ultimately looking back, it's really amazing to see why that was so important, and to really honor and give reverence to your challenges and respect and gratitude even for the hardships, because that's what makes you. That is the school of life. And the rest of it, you know, is just the fun joyride of life. But the challenges is where we grow.
Mm. So tell us a little bit about your story, because you got into yoga because you had a car accident, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it was kind of interesting because my mother and father were into yoga when I was a kid. So my dad like met Swami Muktananda in New York in like the 70s, and they lived in a teepee in Oregon, and that's where he met my mom. And so they were hippies, and they were into yoga. But so I learned as a really young person, like a child, some yoga, but it wasn't like anything formal, like a full class or anything. It was the fun stuff, like back bends and headstand and a couple of things like that. And then I was always an athlete. And then my parents got divorced, and they had a lot of drug problems, so I ended up in foster care. And so yoga was actually really important for me. As I was a young person, I would actually do all these practices in my room. So like yoga and martial arts. I would do, like, I was really into this kickboxing, but just in my room, because it was like snowing out. I lived in South Dakota in the Black Hills. And so I would do all these practices, you know, because it would help me move energy. And I had too much energy at the time because I had this hyperactive thyroid. So anyway, I was doing it as a young person, but I was never really into the yoga, like what you would see as what yoga looked like, because I felt like it was very boring and it was very hyperactive because I had a hyperactive thyroid. So I wanted to run and hike and rock climb and all these things. And then when I moved to Florida, and then when I was around 18, a car, hit my bicycle. It was going 45 miles per hour, and that's really what catalyzed me to get more into the yoga practice, because I met a yoga teacher who told me she had healed her spine with yoga, and the doctors had told me there was no way to regain the curve in your spine. Like the curve in my cervical spine was starting to reverse. So typically it's like a curve like this, and your head sits here, and then it was going straight, and then it was reversing. And this is happening a lot in our society, actually, with we call it computer neck, but basically people like this, and on the TV. But it's happening because the neck curve should be like this, but with computer neck, it's going forward, right? It's like,
I'm starting to feel it in my shoulders, all the editing. And
computer work is really bad on you. And I've learned even just the positioning of your desk in your arms and the mouse and everything, it's terrible for your body anyway. So ultimately, when I learned that you could heal your spine and your body, your life with yoga, I was like, it's hope. And so it gave me hope, and I set out on my journey. And it was also at the time I was going through a huge spiritual transformational awakening, and so I broke up with my boyfriend at the time. There was like a lot of turbulence. So it was like just a huge life transformational pivotal time when I went to get my first yoga teacher training.
But how did you have the confidence and the guts and yeah, how did you manage to create everything you've created? I mean, it's huge. Like, you have all these retreats and courses and CDs and books and videos and everything is, I mean, it's really huge. I'm so impressed. Like, where did that come from? That spark, that intensity, that yeah, belief in yourself. I mean, there's so many people out there who wants to create their dream, you know, have their dream happen, and it seems like you've really manifested something beautiful, and that's which really reaches many people as well.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's very interesting because I think when I was doing it, when I was starting anyway, it wasn't necessarily like that I was creating. It was more like that this needed to be created through me. And I really felt a sincere desire to share these healing practices that were changing my life so much. So, and then I was working with a lot of clients and teaching classes a lot and stuff. So I was getting a lot of confirmation that this was really, really powerful and that it was helping people. So I was like, okay, my vision, I am a big visionary. So that's one of my, from very birth, I think, like, visionary thinker. So I always think, okay, well, if I can help 100 people in my local town, I want to be able to help 1,000,000 people. So how can I do that? And then, like, that was when the video came in, and it was like, wow, I can reach more people. I was one of the first yoga teachers on YouTube. Actually, I was one of the first people on YouTube back in 2006. And nobody was on there back then, you know, and it was like, I didn't even know what it was. I was like, YouTube, okay. One of my clients, he was like, you got to get on YouTube. I was like, okay. So we made a video and we put it on, and it was cool because I remember that video, it got like 80,000 views, like, wow, pretty quickly. And that was really, you know, back in 2006, that's a lot. And, but it was because nobody had yoga videos on YouTube, you know, so it was very rare. Now there's like everybody and their dog has like yoga videos on YouTube, but, you know, we're talking 10 years ago, or 9 years ago. So it's really, you know, it was really, I feel like something that's happened in my path has been about timing. And so I've been an innovator, and that's when the word innovation is, it usually just means you do something ahead of the time, right? So I was doing videos on YouTube before anybody else, kind of. And then, like, I was, like, for instance, I was one of the first people, actually, I started the trend of online yoga challenges, because I did the first 30-day yoga challenge, the first yoga challenge online on my YouTube channel, and started in 2008. And, you know, now everybody does yoga challenges. You know what I mean?
What is that, yoga challenge?
Yoga challenge, yeah, it's like where, you know, you kind of like tell people, okay, we're going to do a yoga challenge, and every day you're going to try a different practice or a different pose, right? And so kind of just like a personal challenge. It's not like a challenge like competition, but it's more like to challenge yourself to see if you can do it, and to do it every day, and to create a habit, which is my goal with it, to help people to do it every day, so you create a habit so that you can, you know, get the benefits. Because if you do it once in a blue moon, it's not really going to impact your life as much as if you do it every day. You start to see these amazing transformations. So I realized that, like, when you do it every now and again, you get some results. If you do it every day, you get incredible transformational results. And I think most people would prefer to have incredible transformational results. So I'm like, all right, well, this is what it takes. And most people don't have discipline, and they don't really have any structure. So that's what I had a background as an athlete, and as a also I was a fitness trainer before I was a yoga teacher. So I was used to creating these structured programs. You know, I created a different kind of yoga and fitness challenge for a hospital, all their staff. There was like 250 employees, and we did a whole fitness challenge there. And so I was very accustomed to understanding that people need like a structure. They need like a beginning and an end, so they feel like it's not never ending, you know, kind of they can imagine the end in sight, and that it seems realistic or reasonable or doable, and that they need the support in place and the kind of, you know, guidance to help them through the process. And so I created a 30-day yoga challenge, and it went viral on YouTube the first year, and we reached millions of people that first time. And it was a little overwhelming, but, you know, it was just another confirmation that these practices were really powerful and important, and that they were helping people. And I was getting emails all the time from people, like, saying how it heals their life, and then asking me, like, what can I do for this? They had like a back pain or this or that, other kinds of things. And basically, so I started to develop more and more videos because I had more practices. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know what to say. It was like, yeah, I do know what can help you, so let me help you. And then I started to develop DVDs from that, and then from there, more and more DVDs, and then I it's just like a long story, but
Yeah, I just love it because you have so many videos, and I just saw a video about crystals, and I'm like, oh, she's into that too. I can spend hours here.
I love crystals. I know.
Yeah, and you're into numerology, and I just love that you really approach different things and see the whole, more holistic picture, because I like that instead of just going to one thing. Because to me, I tend to be attracted to those teachers who kind of don't have one answer. There's like more answers. There's more ways of getting to your intention in a way.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like you're doing something wrong. You can find what is good for you. You can try different things. If crystals work for you, use it. If that doesn't, use something else,
Yeah. And also what works for you one day doesn't always work for you the next day. Like, personally, I'm that way. That's how come I'm a teacher from that perspective, because I'm that way. So I know. I'm like, some days the only thing that's going to help me is to go jump in the ocean. And then some days, yoga is the only thing. And then some days it's like, I need to get on a green smoothie cleanse. And some days the combination is all I need. And so it's like knowing that there's all these resources, all these tools that we have available to us that work. And it's just a matter of finding the combination for you for now, and for what's going to work for now, and also helping people to be able to tap into your intuition to know what you need. Because it's like, I can tell you all day long what you should do, but I think that you have to listen inside and hear your inner voice that says what you need today, what you need right now. And when you do listen to that, you'll always be guided to the right thing. So,
have you always had that strong inner voice?
Yeah, I think I've always had a strong inner voice, but I didn't always listen to it. That's the thing. I think a lot of us do have a strong inner voice. Not everybody, but I think that a lot of people do. And you can strengthen that. So that's not like something that is dead in some people. It's just a dormant or blocked in some people because of those things we were just talking about. But you can awaken any of these energy centers and clarify and make them more clear and louder and make them more dominant. But ultimately, you have to listen. Listening to them is the other 50% of the equation, taking action. Because you can hear the voice, and I've done this, I'm sure everybody's done this, clearly, is you hear the voice, you know what you need to do, and then you don't do it. And you just go to this other, like the opposite of it for some reason. And that's usually because the ego has a different plan. And the ego says, it's like a little menace, it comes in and it leads you astray, and leads you down the wrong roads, and you get whacked into a bunch of balls, and you start hitting your head against brick walls enough, and then you go, okay, well, let me go back to the heart, and let me go back to my intuition and connect with source and see what the truth is for a moment here, because the mind and the ego are kind of I'm not gonna say they're our enemy, but they're definitely our challenge in this life.
Yeah, we could spend hours on that topic. We have to do that some other time. But because I'm curious to hear a little bit about Kundalini yoga, because a lot of people have been talking about that to me, and I'm curious about this. Kundalini energy. Is that something you do? Do you have? Can you talk a little bit about what happens? Like, I know it's something about the spine, and it's symbolized by the snake.
Okay, so Kundalini, yes, it's represented by a serpent. They've tried to put in yoga, they always try to put like a visual to stuff, right? So even with the gods, they have pictures of God, so you can see what it looks like. Ultimately, God doesn't have a face, right? But we have pictures of God, so we can see. This is the same thing with Kundalini. So they make a picture, and it's the closest resemblance is a serpent, which is a snake. And the idea is that it's coiled up at the base of the spine. So in many cases, it can be considered to be dormant. So dormant means that it's not active or that it's not awakened, right? And so there are practices that you can do to awaken your Kundalini. And then the Kundalini travels, right? It moves upwards, or it moves throughout your body, and it's an energy, and it travels along the spine. So if you think about, if you've ever seen the catechus, I think it's called, where it's like a staff, and it's a medical symbol as a staff, and then it has two snakes winding up around it. You know what I'm talking about? It's like a
Yes, I think
symbol of
so.
medical, but that's actually the Kundalini symbol, the
Right.
staff of life, and the two serpents. It's called Ida and Pingala, which is the channels of the energy. So one goes up and the other one comes down, and energy is always circulating like that. So if your Kundalini is kind of blocked, for instance, your energy is kind of not circulating properly. So then you may have, let's say impotency or different types of things that are connected to this block in the Kundalini. And so there are practices you can do to awaken the Kundalini, and there's a whole yoga system called Kundalini Yoga.
Right.
And they do practices, physical practices, and mantras. So chanting and meditation. So specifically, and then breath work. So they do a lot of stuff, but it's very, very specific practices. And the Kundalini yogis mostly always wear like the white turban and the all white clothing. So that's the path of the actual yoga style called Kundalini. But the actual idea of a Kundalini is your energy. So everybody has Kundalini, and you can do Kundalini yoga as a style. So that's kind of two different things, just so you understand.
But the Kundalini awakening, isn't it? I thought it was that this serpent was like, you had it like go up and up and up, and then all of a sudden, after a lot of practice, it would open up and you would have that spiritual awakening.
Well, it's painted that way. The picture is painted that way, and it can be. It can be a very I would say, mind-blowing experience, right?
Okay.
They can call it that. But it's not like, and then you become Amma.
Right.
Very rarely does a Kundalini awakening result to becoming an enlightened saint or something.
It doesn't stay there in a way. You don't stay in that awakened state.
You can.
You can.
But you have to be aware. Like the awareness is, you get to your awakened state and then you maintain it. And that's where your awareness practice kicks in, right? Your day-to-day, how you interact with everything around you is your practice, right? And so you definitely, like if you're awakened, it means you have a connection to source, you feel that connection strong, and then your practice is to maintain that connection or keep it open, right? So that's like if the Kundalini goes through the crown chakra, which is the 7th chakra at the top, like you have this mind-blowing experience, and then like next day you go back to like drinking tequila shots and cheating people, whatever bad, not to say tequila is bad, but you know what I mean? Like that like you've had this epiphany that like you are one with all, and then all of a sudden like we do these things in life that kind of try like numb us back into the world that we live in so that we can relate to the world, because the world, the ego wants to relate to the world, and so we always trying to find our place in the world. So that it's a whole nother topic in itself, that aspect of it. But ultimately, yes, the practice is once you get this Kundalini awakening, to keep it awake, to keep it balanced.
Thank you for that. That makes sense, because I had this idea that once you had that awakening, the veil was lifted off and you saw it. You had connection and it wouldn't go away. But of course, it seems more natural that you would have to, practice it, because we are human beings. And I think, like we said, the natural way of being is the ego. Like, I think we have to practice to see other perspectives, because we've been doing that for so many years, like hundreds and thousands of years, acting through the ego. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. From the beginning. And so, I mean, the path of yoga really is a path of, surrendering the ego. And it's really kind of hard. I think that's why a lot of people resist the yoga path, even if it's subconscious, because it's not easy. It's not like, oh, and I'm so great. And the interesting thing is there's a whole world of yogis that are really not surrendering the ego at all. So, you could get disillusioned by the yogi community and think, oh, like, that too does not look like surrendering the ego. But the actual path of yoga is to get to the point where, you realize, to really realize that we are one, like all is one, is to realize that I am no more than you. We are one. So we're all on the equal playing field, right? So the ego says, I'm better than you, or like trying to compare, right? So that's where ego trips us up. or like judges ourself, put, you know, negative feedback towards the self and deprecation of self. So the balance of that is just wholeness, right? Is just self-love and self-acceptance and acceptance of others and unconditional love of others. And this is a practice. It's a daily practice. And this is what I would say the path towards wholeness is, to get to where that's your natural default, right? So we all have our default. Like, I don't get angry very easily. I'm more of the type of person that will get hurt. Like, if I'm in an altercation with somebody, I will feel hurt or sad, and they'll like typically take the angry position. So, you know, like whatever roles that you play in your life, you know, ultimately you still have to find your way away from that. Even my tendency, and I saw that, you know, have noticed the patterns in my life where I don't take anger, I take hurt, and then, you know, even that's not good though. That's still not whole. So the feeling of sadness is not the natural state. And so catching yourself before you go spiraling into it, and to go back into the realization that you are whole, you are one with Source, and that this experience is only temporary, and it's here to teach you a lesson, and to see the other person for who they are, and the hurt that they have in them that may be lashed out in anger or whatever that caused it, right? So to be able to see from an observer perspective, from a wider lens is the way I like to see it. And so you're not so caught up in it, but you can step back about 20 yards and just see it all, and then take the appropriate action, which is usually grounded in love or compassion or acceptance, and being willing to cut things off, boundaries, you know, really being willing to walk away, knowing that you deserve the best in life and to be treated well. And if you're treating people well and they're not treating you well, you have to walk away. So these are just all like everyday practices, you know.
Thank you so much. This was beautiful, a lot of wisdom. And like I said in the beginning when we connected, you know, I saw that you had these retreats and they seem so amazing. Can you tell us just in the end a little bit about upcoming retreats and things happening?
Absolutely. Every year I travel around the world. I teach yoga retreats and teacher trainings. And the cool thing is at my teacher trainings, people can come and they could either do like a transformational retreat experience, or if they want to become certified, at the end they can actually take the test and become a certified yoga teacher. So I allow for a combination, and it's such a good experience for everybody, because the people that are there just for the transformation experience get to have all these extra kind of teachers around, because these other people are learning how to be teachers and they get to really have this interaction. So I love that. We do it every year in Bali in June, and we already have almost 50% sold out for next year, but June in Bali, and it's amazing. It's so beautiful. We stay 2 weeks in Ubud where they filmed Eat, Pray, Love, and then 2 weeks in the Gili Islands, which is just a magical place. And then basically, we do a lot of trainings all over the world. So Mexico and Hawaii and Costa Rica and the UK, and I travel around every year the same, and different places as well. And then I also teach SUP yoga, so it's yoga on paddleboard. So I do paddleboard yoga teacher trainings, and we're getting ready to launch my new yoga. It's a 30 DYC, 30-day yoga challenge, in my membership site on Dashama.com, and we're going to be launching it on QVC coming up. So that's exciting, and a bunch of other really cool things coming up. So
amazing. Wow. You're really inspiring. Thank you so much for taking the time, and all the best with your work.
Thank you so much, beautiful. Namaste.
Thank you for watching, guys. Much light from Oslo and Miami. Bye-bye.